I'm delighted to have this lady on with us. She has been a friend for many years. She comes from a legendary family in the business, and she has a couple of horses going in the Breeders' Cup races. Helen Alexander, welcome.
Thank you.
You've been there before with Bayern, most notably winning the Classic in 2014. That was the one bred and raised at your Middlebrook farm in Kentucky. What's that feeling like just to be in a Breeders' Cup and then win one?
Gosh, I mean, having a horse that's good enough to be one of the 14 that gets to start in any Breeders' Cup races, it's a huge honor and a thrill, and, you know, it's what everybody dreams of. And to have a winner is kind of, you know, feeling just like none other. I mean, it's just over the top, especially the Classic. I mean, and that one was kind of a tough one because there was a long, you know, inquiry.
I was there. I remember it well, standing with Bob Baffert waiting to see.
Yeah, so it was, and you know, the other thing that was really fun about that was he gave Bob Baffert his first Classic. So I was really excited about that too.
And I imagine, you know, the personal investment that you make, not just the financial, but the emotional and the time of when that horse is raised at Middlebrook. It's right there, and you see them growing up and sending them on their way now to become successful, you hope. That's just probably a feeling hard to describe unless you experience it, I would always imagine.
Well, you know, I mean, the nice babies that you raise, you're always hopeful that they're going to be good, but when they actually pan out, you know, it's so cool, and it makes everybody on the farm so happy, and, you know, because they invest a lot of time and effort and put in some hours during some, you know, horrible weather and all that, and so I'm always very happy for them too.
You know, you grew up on King Ranch is just this legendary place. I knew about King Ranch long before I met you. There's nobody that's even passed through Texas that didn't see something that said King Ranch on it, I don't believe. With that one time 600,000 acres of cattle and horses, and of course with Assault, the 1946 Triple Crown winner. What was that whole experience like? Was it that you were definitely going into the horse business or some kind of occupation to continue on the tradition of the family?
I always was a nut for horses. You know, I love to ride, and I mean, it's what I thought about day and night. I wasn't interested in doing any other sports. All I wanted to do was ride, and broke a lot of ponies growing up, and, you know, did a lot of things that my mother wouldn't have liked very much, like jumping on from the back and standing up in the saddle, and, you know, all kinds of crazy things.
Okay, like cowgirl stuff.
Cowgirl stuff. Plus, I did a lot of jumping, and, you know, I was not supposed to do that by myself, but I did, and had my first horse fall on me when I was by myself doing that. Luckily, nothing happened, but, you know, when I think back on it, I'm like, wow, you kind of had a charmed life.
But look at the success you continued with that.
Well,
you know, to me, it's you know how the success continues that it has from King Ranch. I first met you. You were running their Kentucky division up here.
that's right. Yeah.
That's where we met a few years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago.
A few years ago.
Yeah, still 29, right?
Yeah, we were out there. I think it was doing like a down the stretch story or something back in the old ESPN days, something like that.
Yeah, maybe about Althea or something.
It could have. You know what? It probably was Althea.
Yeah.
I would say that was probably it.
Yeah.
Was that kind of like the breakthrough moment on your own moment, Althea?
Yeah, I mean, she was, you know, she was really special. I mean, she was champion 2-year-old filly of her year. She beat Colts 4 times, you know, set a track record in the Arkansas Derby, and, you know, then went on to be a good broodmare, and she is the 4th dam of Covfefe. So that's kind of exciting. This year's Breeders' Cup entrant for my family.
And you speak of Covfefe, lightning fast.
Yes,
I remember when I
is.
saw her, and I was talking to trainer Brad Cox, who's been on our show before. She's just, and you have bred her. I think she's got a great shot. You know,
I hope so.
You've been on
I
the show
mean,
or not, I would have said that. I just love to watch her. She just takes off.
Yeah, she's a little rocket, and she reminds me a lot of her grandmother, Aurora, who was also the dam of Arch, who wasn't a sprinter, but you know, Aurora was really fast, and this filly's really fast, and it's just kind of, it's fun to have this family keep on producing these top quality horses.
Bloodlines are, it's all about the bloodline, isn't it?
It is, yeah. In the end, I mean, sometimes you have horses that overachieve, as far as their bloodlines go, but I think, for long-term success, having a good bloodline is going to make a big difference.
Is there when you're looking to breed a horse, is there the one thing that you're going to look at first, Helen, when you say I've got to get this mare, I've got to look at some potential stallions? Is there a thing you're looking at first and foremost?
Well, probably first I think about aptitude, whether like a mare needs to have a little more speed or maybe a little more distance. Then I think about the conformation. And then last, really, I think about how the pedigrees are going to match up.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Helen Alexander, Middlebrook Farm. Covfefe. I love that name.
I know, it's
Which
great,
is not a
isn't it?
word, by the way. It's not even a word. It was President Trump's tweet popped up, and that became the name. And every time I see Brad Cox, he's got a Middlebrook Farms hat on. So for that alone, the publicity you're going to get from running her in this race.
Well, actually my farm manager came up with the idea of doing the hat. He wanted to do something nice for the guys that work on the farm and girls. And so, we did the hat, and then I said to my assistant, I said, we need to get Brad Cox one of these hats. I think he'd get a kick out of it. And it's funny that I've seen him being interviewed wearing that hat, and I love it. It's great.
I was at a football game a week ago. He had the hat on. He wears it everywhere. How much, and so much of it is, how much is still marketing, and especially the social media world, and people obviously in the business know Helen Alexander. They know your history. They know Middlebrook Farm. They know about Bayern, Covfefe. They know about Althea, all the successes you've had. But reaching out, is it more of a, marketing thing? Is it different these days to try to get other people to come into the business, those that want to buy horses or breed horses?
Well, it's such a funny thing what motivates people in the horse business. And I think, a lot of people, you hear, oh my God, I saw the Kentucky Derby, or I, was in the infield at the Derby and I just had to do this, or they came in as people that like to bet. And I think we also get lots of people that really enjoy going to Saratoga and to Keeneland and Del Mar, places like that, get converted that way.
Yeah. And when somebody, if I came to you and I said, Helen, I really want to get into the horse business, what do I need to do first off? I guess write a check would probably help.
Well, it doesn't hurt, that's for sure. I think just being as well informed as you can possibly be, talking to a lot of people, reading about the game, things like that are helpful.
I told people that asked me, I said, I just from a covering standpoint, reporting on it standpoint, it's a lot like a stock market. You just can't kind of wing this thing. You got to keep up with it and up with the trends and what's going on. You just can't one day say, hey, I got a lot of money, I'd like to buy a horse.
I mean, if you're going to be like a day trader, you got to be somebody that's really good at it, And so I do think there's a lot of similarity. Yeah, you've got to do your homework in order to be successful.
No one's done their homework better than Helen Alexander over the years, from King Ranch now to Middlebrook Farms. We'll continue our conversation right here on the Horse Racing Show. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. So glad that you're with us. Delighted to have a friend of mine, Helen Alexander, on. After all, the Breeders' Cup is coming up, so why not talk to a breeder? And she's had great success in the past. We think of the likes of Althea and Bayern. Covfefe, keep an eye on her. Don't blink because she's lightning fast. She'll be running in there. And you have another one in the marathon named Campaign that's going to be running.
Yeah, Campaign belongs to Woodford Thoroughbreds, which is a partnership. And I've talked to a couple of the people that are in the partnership, and they're like super excited about him running and think he's got a good chance.
Everybody has a good chance, don't they?
They do.
Does anybody ever come to you and say, Helen, look, I don't have a prayer, but I'm in this race if you want to come and watch?
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing is that, as long as your horse is doing really well and moving forward properly, you've got a really good chance. And you can be 40-1, or in the case of our Kong, 90-1, and you can get the job done.
Yeah. Do you have well, I know your moment would probably be Bayern, I guess. I was going to say, do you have, other than Bayern, do you have a favorite moment of a Breeders' Cup not involving a Middlebrook Farm horse that you just really enjoyed the race?
Well, that one, I mean, I was so hoarse I could hardly talk the next day. So
I was
I was pretty
yeah.
excited.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the top of the list. That's the given, you know?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Because somebody's asked me, and I said, there's been so many. And I know I'll just forget an obvious one. I'll start going back and go, wow, I remember like our Kong, and, I remember, I go back to the very early days. And, I remember Ali Sheba winning it in the dark, basically. I remember Ferdinand and Ali Sheba the first time Derby winners met in the class, those. And you forget, you don't forget them, but sometimes it's so close that you almost slips your mind some of the ones that have happened recently.
There have been some really amazing ones from the very first one, which was a super thrilling race, to Zenyatta winning. I mean, it's every year it produces a pretty exciting result.
Growing up on King Ranch, what was that like? I mean,
God.
This, it's because it's like a fantasy for the rest of us to look in and see 600,000 acres, I think, at one time. And, a Ford named a truck after you drive an F-150, it may have a King Ranch emblem on it.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about that partnership with Ford. Yeah. I mean, that's been pretty successful, and I love seeing those King Ranch trucks out on the road. It's great. Just, I don't know, for a kid that loved the outdoors and loved nature, I mean, it's really a special place to be. I mean, it's full of wild animals and birds and beautiful habitat.
Yeah. And I imagine growing up, you heard a lot about assault, probably the others. You start going down the list. Again, we're talking like Breeders' Cup. You start going around Great King Ranch horses, there's a lot, but, assault, I guess, jumps out.
Yeah, I think my grandparents had an amazing run with him, and so did my mom, who was really just coming out of high school at that time, and, they were just over the moon. But, it's interesting, too. I remember my grandfather telling me stories about, going straight from Louisville to Pimlico, and I was like, well, that's weird. And when I looked at the actual charts, you realize that the Derby and the Preakness back then were only a week apart.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So, I mean, but they had a ball.
Oh, that's, it's such a great time, and it still continues. And you mentioned your mother, and then you come along. I don't know, how it was for women in racing. It's certainly a different day and age, thank goodness now. But was it ever a time when, you're the girl trying to run the farm? Did you ever feel that way in the business, which has been basically a guy's business for so long?
No, honestly, I never did. The only thing I remember was like when I'd go to the track early in the morning with my grandfather. It was mostly at Saratoga. And there weren't that many girls that were galloping horses back then. And I always thought, gosh, that looks like it would be so fun to do. And, there was kind of a stigma attached to being a female and working on the track back then, which thankfully has completely changed.
Helen Alexander, Middlebrook Farm, Covfefe. See, it's a name that doesn't. This is not even a word. I'm mispronouncing a word that doesn't even exist. Covfefe, lightning fast. Campaign will run in the marathon. 2 of the horses that she has bred, and Middlebrook Farm, the success you've had out there. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
How's that going on the farm these days?
Well, pretty good. I mean, we've had, actually, it's kind of interesting. I was looking the other day. There was 3 Middlebrook babies that went through the Fassig-Tipton May 2-year-old sale, and all 3 of those have won this year. So that's pretty good.
Good little resume to keep adding to, isn't it?
Not bad.
We know about the problems that the industry's had this year. We try not to belabor the point on here, but, one of the questions that keeps coming up is the breed just getting too closely inbred now? Is this a weaker horse that they're breeding overall? Speed only, endurance is secondary. Is that a legitimate concern right now, or is that just a lot of talk and what's been a lot of talk trying to figure out what all's going on?
I personally don't think that that's in fact the case. I know, like for myself, I have mares that I'm looking for speed, and I'm not really necessarily finding the stallions that I want to use that are going to put that speed back in there. So there are some horses that are getting a lot more mares than others. And I think the only thing I worry about is horses not getting a chance that deserve a legitimate chance.
Mm-hmm. And the industry overall, are you glad that they're keeping it at Santa Anita, the Breeders' Cup? I mean, I am, because I think, it's one of the marquee places. I'm glad that they're sticking with it. And
I think Santa Anita's done a lot of positive things to try and get things under control. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to have a great day of racing. Well, 2 great days of racing out there.
do you get nervous when the horse that you bred, that you already sold, but you bred and raised, and you're standing in the background? Or you may be be on the rail, I don't know. But, you're kind of there watching one of your own. And
back in the day, I used to get like super nervous. My heart would just be like pounding. But, now I'm relatively calm, because whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
do you have predictions?
I have no predictions, but I have hopes.
which is the way I've led life,
Yeah.
That's the way I leave it. Is getting up in the morning and still going to work and, figuring out the breeding and everything, that still has to be a very exciting time at Middlebrook for you.
Trying not to make mistakes is really the key. I mean, we can talk all we want about trying to get the best of the best and all that, but, sometimes it's just trying not to make mistakes.
You don't make mistakes.
Oh, yeah, plenty, just like everybody else.
People ask me that are not followers of the sport necessarily, say, in baseball, if you hit 300, you're a good hitter. You could get in the Hall of Fame. I said, you hit 300 as a bettor at the track, if you manage your money right, you're probably doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have a percent? What's a good percentage for a breeder? Obviously, 100 is what everybody wants. Nobody has 100% anything, I don't think, in any business.
I really don't look at things in terms of percentages. So I just hope that every horse is going to get the best chance that it can get. And, when your horses get in the right hands, when you sell them and have a real chance to do well, that's always a big thing for me.
And so far, the business is good. The horse business, is it a good business still to be in right now? Do you see a positive down the road with all the negative things that have happened this year?
Yeah, I think there's still lots and lots of people in the horse business that are very enthusiastic about it. And there's a lot of people that are willing to work very hard to make sure that things go in the right direction. So I am positive.
I will see you in California next week.
You will.
I will see. I'll look for the Covfefe hats of Middlebrook Farm. They'll be everywhere.
That'll be us.
Helen, congratulations on all the success. Althea and Bayern. I'm going to start leaving out names if I mention them all, but you've got Covfefe this year.
Go
I know.
Covfefe.
I've seen her. She's running and in the marathon campaign. So all the best to you in Middlebrook, and thank you so much for coming in. It means a lot.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Helen Alexander. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us on the Horse Racing Show.